Hello and welcome to the Start for Future session on prototyping and testing your ideas. So you've got your business idea for a product or a service and you've identified a group of target customers. But how do you know if your idea is any good? Prototyping is a good way to test your idea without spending a huge amount of time, effort or money at the early stage of your project. Here's Alex Osterwalder's definition of prototyping from his book, The Value Proposition Design. Osterwalder describes prototyping as being the practice of building quick, inexpensive and rough study models so that you can learn about the desirability, feasibility and viability of alternative value propositions and business models. Ultimately, what we want to develop are resilient ideas. We can do that by working in collaboration with our customers and our stakeholders, and it will allow us to communicate more effectively the idea when we go to market. Bill Moggridge was the inventor of the first laptop and a co-founder of the design agency IDEO. He describes prototyping in this way: the only way to experience an experience is to experience it. He's really saying what you have to do is jump in, immerse yourself in it and really go for it. That's what we'll do now. First question is, what kind of prototype should you build? There are lots of different ways you can do this, from the low resolution, quick and dirty prototyping using the materials that you have to hand, through something at mid-resolution that might be a little bit more sophisticated and allow you to test functions in your interactions with your customer or stakeholder group. And then we go right up to high resolution, which will be closer to your MVP. The challenge with those types of things tends to be that they require more time and effort and money to build. So for the purposes of this program and for this session, we're going to focus more on the low resolution end of the prototyping scale. There's lots of things that you can do in terms of prototyping, using rough and ready prototyping techniques, using the resources that you have to hand, using materials like cardboard or paper or Lego or Play-Doh just to build rough and inexpensive models that you can show to your customers. You can draw out sketches using a pencil and paper, or create storyboards that will help you tell the story of the customer journey. If you want to get a little bit more sophisticated, you can start to build in diagrams and frameworks, or perhaps virtual models if you've got the technological skill set. You can experiment with your branding using graphics and other visual images. Perhaps you can think about how you will use physical spaces to showcase your product or service to best effect. You can think about role-play exercises to allow the customer to experience the product or service in real time. Video is a great way to do that. Perhaps either you can use a physical space and create the role play using real people in front of other people, or perhaps you can just film a video and show that to your audience. You can also think about how you will prototype other elements of your product or service. The packaging will be used to augment the customer experience. You might think about prototyping the packaging as well. I've got machine constructions on the list here. Those can be a bit more challenging in terms of resource and time to build, but nevertheless these are another option here as well. And finally, I've mentioned the business model canvas. That's a great tool for testing your business model. You want to be able to gather feedback on how the business model works from the potential customers that will be using it. A quick word on sketching, because it's perhaps the simplest way to start prototyping is just to draw your ideas, and it's something that we would encourage you all to do. Some people are daunted by the idea of sketching because they don't think they've got artistic skills, but the reality is it doesn't really matter that much. When you keep adding detail to a picture that you're drawing, somebody eventually is going to recognise what it is, and it's a great way to share your ideas at a very early stage. And of course, when the ideas are rough, people will see, hopefully, the opportunity rather than when they see a finished model, pointing out the things that don't work. Another thing to draw your attention to is something that most of us will have in our pocket or about our person, and that is a smartphone. The smartphone is an amazing tool to use in your prototyping exercises because of the technology that exists there. You can use your camera, your microphone, the audio, you can create videos. You can use lots of different apps to help you to showcase your product or service, whether you're creating videos or using the apps out there that will allow you to recreate the functionality of a software application so that you can put the phone in somebody's hands and they can experience what it would be like to use your product or service. Your smartphone is going to be a really important tool for you in your prototyping. I would encourage you also just to really get creative. Think about how you can build a model that allows people to interact with it. Here's an example of a 3D printer model. Now, the point is that you can just use the materials that you have to hand in order to build something. People will get the point and they will be encouraged to interact with it. I would encourage you to think also about the time that you spend on these things. Creativity works best in small bursts, so set time limits on your activity. You can only be creative in the moment for so long, so remember to take breaks, walk away from the thing when you're getting bored of the exercise or where you think you've got no more new ideas. You can come back later. Also think about the environment that you're getting creative in. It's good to do this thing with other people around, where teamwork encourages those little sparks of creativity. In terms of how you test your prototype, you've got to think about who you're going to show it to and in what setting, what kind of people, what stakeholders have you identified. Hopefully up to this point you've done some stakeholder mapping, some customer analysis and perhaps some market segmentation, so you know about the different groups that would be a target market for you and your potential startup. The next thing you need to think about is how you will get in front of those different groups and in what scenarios. What scale of test is a big question. Well, there's no right or wrong answers here, but you need to think about enough people giving you feedback that will convince not just you, but them, your stakeholders, and ultimately your investors and other people involved in the project, that this is going to work. When you're working with different customer groups with different values or perhaps different problems, you need to be careful of their conflicting interests and how that will impact in certain scenarios. So think about who you're testing with at any given point in time. Think about where you're going to test the prototype. What kind of environment are you going to create? You need to be aware of the special requirements of your user group, accessibility and user availability issues. How much time and commitment do they need to give in order for you to get effective feedback? And of course you also have to think about how you're going to gather that feedback, collate the learning that you take from these exercises. Remember to test alternative scenarios, demonstrate your product or service at normal and extreme situations. It's amazing what you can learn from people that are using your product in extreme situations. It will often lead you to new discovery and it will really help you to develop the value proposition that you have. What do you expect to learn from all this? Well, it kind of depends on who you're testing your product with. So you've got to think about the motivation of that stakeholder group. What's their background and experience? What are their problems, dreams and wishes? You're looking to gather the emotional responses as well as just the straight conversational feedback and so on. You've got to figure out what features they like, of course, but also perhaps what alternatives are they currently using? How do they solve the problem at the moment? Think about their overall experience. Can you record it? What did they like or dislike? What was their mood and their attitude towards your product or service? And how are you going to use that feedback to influence the building of your next prototype? How will you evaluate the learning? Again, there are no right or wrong answers really here. It's just about you thinking through the process and trying to extract best value. So here's a few tips. Just use what you have in terms of resources to hand and so on. Don't overthink it. Don't be scared to change it. It's very easy to fall in love with your product when you put a bit of time into thinking about it. And sometimes when you get feedback that is less than encouraging, your temptation is to disregard that and to plough on with what you're doing. If you're getting feedback that's telling you to change, you need to think about changing. Set a time limit on your creativity. You will know how you work best, but you can't keep going endlessly on something. You've got to stop and go out and test at a certain point. Have fun, and of course share your prototype as widely as you can. Remember to get quality feedback and take your time to analyse the feedback. As I said, don't take it personally if people are less than encouraging. This is useful information that will influence the way that you continue to build on your product and service prototypes. Remember, you can go again and again and again. This is an iterative process. Test quickly and move on. It's that ongoing process. Remember that prototyping is not about getting things right or perfect all the time. You should be prepared to make mistakes. It's going to be a messy process. Don't worry about that. It's better to fail fast and early so that you can learn from your mistakes and move on. So really get out there, talk to your users, and good luck with your prototypes. Thank you.